Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George,
My name is Tom.
And my name is Adam.
and with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com.
Now, Adam, I don't know about you, but do you notice that George sometimes starts using expressions he's previously chastised me for using?
Yes. Yeah, often.
What?
Yes,
What
he's a man
expressions?
I think
he's a complex individual.
Well, just prior to hitting record on this one here, you said, "All right, let's fuck this puppy," which I've said previously, and you've gone, "Oh no, God, dude, don't say that," and now you start saying,
Okay, first of all,
of course, the correct.
Hang on. The listeners just joined us. Okay, so there's no evidence that I said that. Second of all, even if I did say that revolting expression, which I abhor, no, I didn't.
See, you're getting it all wrong anyway, because the correct expression is actually "let's fuck this chicken," not puppy. So,
Okay.
I mean,
I don't think I've ever heard someone say that.
Yep. Yeah, it's definitely I mean, look, I don't know. Go on Urban Dictionary or something. It's
Oh yes,
common
Urban
parlance.
Dictionary, the true bastion of like actual expressions, and not people just uploading whatever like racist bilge they feel like chucking up there.
Now,
yes,
how does
racist bilge.
At their mates once?
Where's the entomology of like how does that relate to "we're not here to fuck spiders"? Like what's the common root of all of these expressions, and why are humans trying to have sex with strange animals? That's the broader question.
It does really seem like the etymology of all those sorts of expressions comes from either a conscious or unconscious recognition that all motivations come down to fucking something. So it might be that, in the case of "we're not here to fuck spiders," you're picking like, no, well, that's obviously what we're not here to do. We're here to do something else. But I could see how you'd be confused because, of course, we'd be here to fuck something. So it all comes down to our base needs. As all our
I'm fucking right now. That's how it all works out. You can't see my hands. That's all I'm gonna say. No, I'm joking. Hands are here.
Hands up, Adam. Hands are. I can see him.
This is a clean show. Real clean show.
Real family show.
Did we fly back to like 10 years ago and become like 21-year-old shitlords again? I feel like we did.
Well, Tom, we did just shave our beards and cut our hair, and we do now kind of look like twins again. So
thank you for saying that I had a beard, because I think we both know that I really did not.
Yeah, I mean,
Tom.
I mean, I was trying to talk you up a bit, so I mean.
Oh no, thank you. I appreciate that, and I will take it gladly. But let's not lie to the listeners. I cannot grow a beard.
Tom's got a beard like Matthew Guy has a conscience. So, you might have heard this week that Matthew Guy and we are, for being so expletive-laden as a podcast, we are as mature, at the very least, as the Liberal and National Party parties here in Victoria, because they had a bit of a stout this week or recently. There was an expletive-laden audio tape which was recorded by someone who was obviously very unhappy with the state of affairs, which reveals divisions in the Victorian opposition over gay conversion therapy. So you might have heard a couple of weeks ago we reported on the program. Reported makes it sound very highfalutin, doesn't it? We talked about on the show that
also we're a program as well. That's even more.
Welcome. Today on Four Corners.
We spilled some words out our mouth holes about the subject.
Yes. In regards to, it was an Instagram page called The Virtuous Victorian, which was having a go at Matthew Guy for quietly trying to sort of push through trying to make some promises, at the very least, to undertake work, should they be re-elected, to allow gay conversion therapy again in Victoria, which has been outlawed.
Because the current party, passed legislation to officially outlaw it.
Yeah.
There were rumblings around that they had made an agreement in consultation with like religious leaders and things like that, being like, oh if we get elected back in, we'll roll that back. They've since publicly said that they won't. that's not a policy.
No, hang on. Not only did they say they're not going to bring it back after they were pressured and they said, no, that's a lie. We're not going to bring it back. And then the public was like, okay, then why don't you promise you're not going to bring it back? And they're like, yeah, we promise we're not going to bring it back. We never were going to bring it back. Y'all are fucking crazy, okay? We like here at the LNP, we like to fuck, okay? We accept everyone who fuck, all different types of people who fuck. It's just real fuck fest, completely permissive, no moral scolding whatsoever. And then, of course, recordings from behind the scenes prove that not only had they made this promise, which they said they hadn't, but also that there were internal sort of stoushes arguing over Matthew Guy's unilateral decision to say, hey, we're not going to reinstate
back down.
Over his decision to back down.
Yeah, not only had they made the promise that they said they didn't make,
yes,
but then there are people who are unhappy about the fact that they aren't going to go through with the promise that they said they didn't make, even though they did make it, and they're also very annoyed that they didn't consult to take back the promise that was never made.
Yeah, exactly. Couldn't be clearer. Now, Tom, it was your birthday recently. How does this, does Peter Walsh, Victorian Nationals leader, telling James Newbury to go and get fucked, how does that rank on like birthday presents for Tom in recent years? How does that sort of, what does that come in? Does that place at least, or?
It's pretty delicious. Like, I think as Adam, I think you phrased it in such a way when I sent this article to you guys of that you love how fucking broken they are. It's like, yeah, it's good when the party you really don't like are really fucking stupid.
It's just comical ineptitude. That's my favorite thing. Like, I'd be really upset if they did in fact get their shit together. So here we can let's listen to some
I haven't listened to the audio. I've just read the quotes.
It's pretty good.
I'm keen for this.
It's as good as the quotes are. The actual audio always beats the quotes, in my opinion. Here we go.
Thanks, Matthew. My assumption from this conversation is that the shadow cabinet process and the party room process no longer applies to any decisions we've made. That if a shadow minister changes, then they can put their own personal views on a policy irrespective of what's been through the processes of our two parties. I think we've totally lost our way. That just because James has been appointed the shadow doesn't give him the right to change history and put a very definite view that is counter to what's been agreed by our party processes. So from a Nationals point of view, we will not be supporting James on his position, and he can go and get fucked. Simple as that.
Wow.
That was so measured
until the very last sentence, and look, we as the Nationals think it's unfair that just because James Newbury, was appointed as the, the
shadow minister. Yeah.
Shadow minister for what was it? For equality or something like that. Like it all sounded very measured and very, very sensible up until that point. Here we go. Shadow Minister for Equality. So James Newbury gets appointed as Shadow Minister for Equality. And turns out having a Shadow Minister for Equality that advocates gay conversion therapy, not a good look. So...
yeah, kind of counterintuitive to the very essence of the role, I feel.
And it all sounded very reasonable. And look, and we just, we think we've all agreed in the party room this is what's going to happen, and fucking suck eggs, cunt. It was just the last minute. Anyway, there's another one which gets nice.
I was going to say, can you please play the second clip, because this is the one I want to hear.
Yeah. So one of the it's a bit of a stoush between Bernie Finn, LNP backbencher and melting candle, and famous Shadow Attorney General Tim Smith. So that's what we're going to hear now.
Is it Tim Dick Smith? I assume it's that same Tim Smith.
Dick Smith? What?
Yeah. The Donut Dick. Remember, he tried to do the donuts for 800 deaths in Victoria.
I assume it's the same
Tim Smith.
Yeah.
I would believe it would be. Yeah.
All right, excellent.
Well, David, what do we say to those communities that we gave ironclad guarantees to earlier this year? What do we say to them who are now looking at us and saying, you people can't be trusted? Well, again, as others have pointed out, the issue was about gay conversion therapy, and that's we gave guarantees that we would amend the legislation upon not about gay conversion emergency therapy was about gender. We gave commitment. We gave commitment. Tim, you might not care about commitments, but a lot of us do. I can read you, fool. Read the fucking thing. It's got you. You are a fucking Go away. Come on, listen.
Righto. Come on, lads.
Just the poor Zoom moderators, just like, okay, all right, okay. Do I start muting people? I don't know. That didn't work out well last time I did that. So let's let them.
Would the member for fuckwits please pipe down for a second?
Yeah, really good. It might have been a bit hard to hear for the listeners at some points, but I feel the highlights from that is when Bernie Finn asking Tim Smith, what are you going to say?
What do we say to them?
Okay. Read the fucking bill, Bernie.
We gave a commitment, Tim. You might not care about commitments, but a lot of us do. Yep. Sorry.
Oh no, I can read, you fool. Read the fucking thing.
You're a fucking idiot.
Yeah, it's going back and forth. There's that thing of like, what do we say to the communities who feel like we lied to them? Read the fucking bill, Bernie. It's just.
But that's the bit that I'm a little bit confused about with that. Are they talking about reading the amendment that they want to that would have been proposed, or are they talking about reading the bill that actually already exists and effectively bans gay conversion therapy? Because it sounded like they were trying to quibble on some of the nuances of it. But I think from my perspective, it's the same thing as when Michael O'Brien. It turns out like Michael O'Brien and Matthew Guy. Basically the same person.
Wait.
What? Yeah,
You're telling me that swapping out one pasty, middle-aged white guy from inner city Melbourne, who is a Liberal voter, has been part of the Liberal Party for his entire life, with another guy who matches all of those exact same credentials, may not result in a gargantuan shift in the direction of the party.
No, it turns out, in fact, it's his name is actually Matthew Guy, so it's basically fits the mold right in there.
Colour me shocked.
But the thing is that, prior to Matthew Guy leaving, I think you might have been away for this show, but Tom and I were discussing about the previous party room meeting that got leaked. This isn't the first meeting it's been leaked, by the way. It's been several meetings that have been leaked. It turns out, whenever someone doesn't like what's happening in the party room, that's just like tapes just get released to the media.
Can I just say, I just love that the Victorian Liberal Party cannot find their arsehole with two hands and a flashlight. Like, it honestly brings me such joy that they're such a bunch of petty fuckwits that at every available opportunity they will continuously throw one another under the bus ad infinitum like some sort of MC Escher Mobius strip of backstabbing. Like, I just love how comically inept these cunts are. It's fantastic.
So, what was it? Probably 2 months ago now, 3 months ago, something like that.
Yeah, right.
Michael O'Brien had basically just announced, same thing, it's the same situation, had basically just announced a policy without consulting cabinet. And it went up on their website and was basically passed as, liberal gospel. But then obviously when you went back to the party room, they were like, well, you haven't discussed any of this with us. It's exactly the same situation, which goes to show as well that, the policies that are being put through, there's a difference between what they're trying to do from an optics PR point of view, right? And what the internal machinations of the coalition are actually functioning. I'm assuming this happens at a federal level as well, where you'll have one thing being discussed at cabinet level, and then you've probably got, a couple of ministers, and maybe just the premier or whatever, and their PR apparatus operating out over here. And that was like one of the main criticisms of, if you think of a federal context, that was one of the main criticisms of pretty much why all the other prime ministers we've had over the last 10 years have been stabbed. Because they don't like the fact that you're not listening to the party room and it just goes to show that this is a problem that, I mean, I'm sure it happens in Labor to a certain extent as well. It's just, as to how angry and how tight some of these members' relationships are with the media, and how angry they are, and that is the thing that will differ whether or not you hear about it or not.
I just wonder why they think it's a good idea to, obviously someone who's in the party room is leaking these calls out to the media. And I just wonder,
Multiple people.
it just makes you look like a bunch of messy bitches. It might help you in the short term to gain a political advantage of one faction over the other, but then they can do the same thing right back to you. And so what happens is the public trusts neither faction. Their trust in your party goes completely to shit. Like it doesn't advantage you in the long term to be messy like this. And I think it's something that the federal party, both on Labor and Liberal, does a lot better. Is like the federal Liberal Party in particular is like quite tight on their talking points. Whenever you see fucking Frydenberg on Insiders or Q&A, he's got his talking points, right? They're talking gas-led recovery. They're talking technology, not taxes. They're talking stop the boats. They've got a couple of 3-word slogans that they trot out every time, and every question comes back to, like, they are tight on their messaging. And the climate change thing currently going on now between the Libs and the Nats is probably an example where things
Still
have
unresolved,
gone,
by the way. Still unresolved.
Still unresolved. But that's probably the first notable example in some time since the last prime minister got knifed, where there's been that sort of like really public sort of messy bitch stoushing, going on. If it seems like for whatever reason the feds have the federal guys have a tighter lid on their messaging and on their public strategy. It's the only thing.
When it goes, it goes.
When she goes, she goes.
She goes, and there's blood all over Parliament. It's great.
So, I mean, what do we rate Matthew Guy's chances at the next election? What do you reckon? Do we think it's Dan Andrews, who's had about 90 minutes of screen time per day? He has universal name recognition in not just our state, but states abroad. Or do we think it is generic white guy from the conservative side of politics? What do we think their chances are?
I mean, the comedic side of me is thinking, oh yeah, Matthew Guy's horrendously incompetent and will just have no chance in hell. But on the flip side, yes, while Dan Andrews, household name, 90 minutes of screen time every day, all that sort of stuff, as a result of that level of profile for the pandemic, there'll just be a whole bunch of people who hate his guts. For all the publicity that doing daily lengthy press conferences that greatly affect everyone in a crisis, for all the positive that gets you. Yeah, there's also the terrifying nutbag anti-vax crowd, and
not even the anti-vax crowd. There are a lot of people.
The tradie army that we saw on the Westgate and all that sort of stuff. You'll get equally those people who are staunchly against him.
Yeah, I wouldn't even. I think there'll be a massive swing against the Labor Party. I think they might still scrape through. Yep, but because the fact is, people just blame, whether it be. You don't even have to. There are people that believe in vaccines and are happy with, going along with the lockdowns, but they still are pretty angry of having to do all that.
Yeah. So you reckon
they blame Dan Andrews?
Negative partisanship will be. It's not that anyone likes Matthew Guy or even remembers which one it is.
Vote
it's literally
for something else on the box.
People voting against Dan Andrews. Yeah. I think there'll be a contingent. I think that pretty much everyone in this context during the pandemic is getting returned. We saw Mark McGowan over in WA leave the Liberal Party over there with enough members to fill a canoe. So I don't think it's going to be that level of wave, but I think it'll be within the bandwidth of a normal election. But I'm fairly confident that Dan Andrews would win, unless barring some massive changes.
He's got about another year, I think. So.
Oh yeah, and I think we can be deadly certain that if he doesn't win, it sure as hell won't be because people actually prefer Matthew Guy.
No, yeah. There is no universe in which it is because they prefer Matthew Guy. It's because something else has gone. Something's gone drastically wrong on the Labor side of politics. But
yeah.
Who knows? Maybe they'll hire a new marketing team and it'll all just turn around.
I don't know. I just don't understand how. There's this weird disconnect with the Liberals as to like what they say, what they're saying publicly. No, we don't support gay conversion therapy. And what they say privately, which is, we totally support gay conversion therapy. And when we get in, we're going to, people will find out. If that was the case,
it's obvious that there's a what do you call it, a rupture in the coalition in that instance. It's the Nationals.
But like, if they got in and were like, "Oh, we're going to introduce gay conversion therapy," everyone would be like, "No," because we didn't vote for that, and that's not what we, the public, want. Like, yes, you might have promised all of these special interest groups, but like at best, you'll get one term and then be back on the. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't see what was the strategy here. It's like you can't talk out of two sides of your mouth. Like, you can do that, I guess, in the run up to one election, but like you can't do that in perpetuity. Just like, Labor tried to do that at the last election, right? Whenever they were in coal country, they were like, "Oh yeah, coal, jobs, we love jobs." And then whenever they were in inner city, Victoria, inner city New South Wales, they were like, "Climate change is the most important." And people would just like look at the clips and then put them next to each other and be like, we have the internet, right? Like, people, we can all see
how
this.
How dumb do you think we are? Yeah.
And that, made people really mistrust them. So I don't think, I don't know. I just don't know what the strategy is. Am I giving them too much credit that there is a strategy? I don't know.
I don't think there is at this point. I think it's policy on the run.
Policy on the run. We're making policy on the run. Speaking of making things up on the run, Donald Trump, everyone's favorite, duffel bag full of shit, Donald Trump, has revealed plans to launch a social media platform called Truth Social. Truth is in all caps. So it's not Truth Social. It's Truth Social in order to fight big tech.
By becoming big tech.
Yes. And isn't this interesting in that, didn't he... I might be misremembering this, but didn't he launch like a blog that he immediately gave up on?
Yeah, so he did launch a blog from the desk of Donald Trump, I believe it was called, from recollection. And
except what that really means is from tweeted from the toilet of Donald Trump.
Yeah, it was basically he said, we're creating our own social network and it's going to be amazing. It's going to be incredible. And they're like, actually,
it's full of lies.
Technology is really hard. Let's do a blog instead. And it was so poorly attended, got so little traffic that, legitimately like a WordPress blogger, fucking Tumblr, that he put together. And it was so poorly attended, so poorly read, that they shut it down almost immediately. So now, months later, they've come together with, the Trump
Media and Technology Group.
Yeah, so the Trump Empire, the Trump whatever that's called, Trump
Media and Technology Group.
No, well that's what they merged with this SPAC, so Special Purpose Acquisition Company, which we'll talk about in a sec. They've merged to form what's now called the Trump Media and Technology Group, and since that's been a thing, that's up something like 1,200%. It was like number one traded equity in the US yesterday. Like, it's become a huge thing all of a sudden. But
there's a lot of people that are probably looking for something exactly like this. Like all those people that were banned from Reddit, all the people that were banned from
here's the thing,
various other social media platforms. They're looking for an outlet.
It's called Truth Social. And they say, like, it's all about freedom of speech, right? You can get on here and say all you want. So two things with that. Number one, it's not really freedom of speech when one of the rules of the platform is you can't criticize Truth Social or Donald Trump.
Is that one of the rules?
That's one of the rules, is you can't criticize us.
Wow.
There's all of these, like a myriad of rules about, like, it's all about truth and, like, social media freedoms, and you can say and do whatever you want, except criticize us, talk shit about Donald Trump.
Hurt my feces.
Yeah. It is actually way more restrictive if you look at the rules than, Twitter or any of these other platforms. So that's number one. Number two is I feel like whenever there's these free speech platforms, like Gab, for example, was one of these. If what you do is you allow people to say whatever the fuck they want, then the people that run towards those platforms are inevitably the worst kinds of shitbags. They're just like alt-right, neo-Nazi people that can't go to other places and say what they want to say because they get kicked off. And so they go to your shitbag platform full of Nazi
That was
cunts,
my point. Yeah.
and it just descends into chaos, and then no one. But this is the thing: is then
This
no
is
one's
how-
on the platform that you want anymore because it's full of Nazis. You know, like it
That's
just
pretty much how
self-defeating.
what happened to what was it, what was the group called QAnon?
Yeah.
That was what happened to them. They got, basically shunted to various channels, where they ended up with the worst of the worst, basically, because it was, banned several times. But they're also going to merge. It's not just a social media platform. There are plans to also include subscription video on demand service that will include entertainment, news, and podcasts. And they eventually, apparently, want to compete against Amazon Web Services and other cloud-based, software
Good
platforms.
luck.
It's a bold mandate.
Which is basically the definition of big tech. If you're doing that, you're big tech.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, Amazon Web Services, who runs the fucking internet. Yeah, you are literally big tech if that's the case. There's a few things here. Obviously, none of that's ever going to happen. Number two, it does seem like this is exactly what they talked about. In that what was that? Was it Wolf? Thomas Wolfe book? Fear?
Oh, I know the one you mean. I can't remember who wrote it.
But basically what he said is the whole thing about the campaign. No, not Fear, Trump in the White House. That's Woodward. What was that other one?
Was this the first book where it was
This is
talking
one of
about
the
the purpose
Trump
of the campaign
books.
was to...
Peril.
The purpose of the
Fire and
campaign
Fury.
running initially.
Here we
yeah,
go. Fire and Fury by
Fire and
Michael Wolff,
Fury.
which we both read, Tom and I think. And yeah, so basically as part of that, he talks about, Tom's like, no, I didn't read it.
I don't think I read it. I read all the highlights that were
Cool.
in the media.
You didn't
I
miss-
didn't actually sit down and read the book.
You didn't miss much. That's fine. But yeah, so in Fire and Fury, they talk about how Trump was not expecting to win the election in 2016. The whole point was to be a kind of a launching point for Trump media. And that was what they expect. They expected they would lose against Hillary Clinton. And then turns out on election night in 2016, turns out they won. Melania Trump was furious. So it's, so it just kind of seems like the fruition of that sort of harebrained idea now into this technology platform. So, I mean, we'll see. But I'm also aware that like everything Trump does is a fucking pump and dump scam. Like Trump University.
Are you talking about Trump steaks?
Trump steaks.
They
Trump
weren't in
vodka.
earnest.
Like he's famous for coming in, using his profile to pump up the value of an asset, cashing out, and then leaving the whole thing to crash and burn. Like he's done so famously several times. And the thing with SPACs, this is where we come back to SPACs. So special purpose acquisition company is it's basically like a sneaky way of going public without having to do all of the due diligence that allows you to go public. So normally when you IPO, when you have an initial public offering for your company, you say, hello, my name is, George.
Frank Walker from National Times.
Hello, I'm Frank Walker from National
the
Times.
way you said that.
Hi, I'm a trustworthy person. Here's my board of directors. Here's the company. Here are the financials. Here's all the due diligence that you have to do in the lead up to. This is all the stuff you have to give the SEC to say, I am a big boy company and I would like to be listed on the stock exchange, please and thank you. SPACs kind of don't have to do all that because it's this sort of, it's a they've been around for decades, but because being used as a vehicle to kind of like sideways. So basically what you're doing is you're merging with a company
It's already on the exchange.
that's already on the exchange, right? And that allows you to have whatever company and bring that on the exchange without any of the due diligence. So it's kind of like sneaking into the stock exchange. Yeah. And it's not good and it's a real problem. And they've been referred to as blank check companies. So the whole purpose of the company is to facilitate what might be dodgy, unverified shit getting on the stock exchange. Like stocks on the stock exchange are risky enough, but to not have the due diligence either that would allow you. So for example, like WeWork was a really famous example in recent years where, they tried to get on the stock exchange, did all, gave all this due diligence information out, and people were like, hey, your companies are just nonsense. Like, your company's a bullshit company. This company doesn't make any sense. They're talking about being a technology platform and all this sort of stuff, but when people sort of actually looked into it, there's a lot
You just rent office buildings.
basically fraud and corruption, and the business model didn't make sense. It was kind of reliant on getting additional funding to get to the next step, and they've kind of built this empire on sand, and then the whole market just kind of went like, yeah, nah. And so they haven't gone public. I think they're going to try and take another run at it, but it's like having those guardrails in place is really important, because it means that retail investors aren't as easily defrauded of their money as they might otherwise be. If you've got SPACs literally just like sucking up companies into the public market, and then now, as we can see, this stock is up 1,200%. I'm sure, Trump's going to cut and run. He's
got a few outstanding creditors, I think, isn't it?
He does. He personally owes about $400 million and has nothing to pay it with. So that will
put it in the washing machine, boys. Get it in the washing machine. Clean that bad boy out.
Yeah. So it's all right. He can get a Russian oligarch to buy one of his houses for too much money again if he really falls into too much trouble. So, but yeah, SPACs are a weird fucking thing, dude. Like how does
the SPAC
weird.
get listed in the first place? Obviously, they can't go to the stock exchange and be like, "I'm a SPAC and I'm dodgy as fuck."
Well,
they'd have to go in being like, "Well, here's what we're gonna aim to do," and blah 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 blah. But secretly, it's just like we're just gonna have the company sitting there for however long we want it to until we find something that we want to merge with.
I don't
and then go from there.
know. I don't really understand how. Well, so based on what it says on Investopedia, SPACs are generally formed by investors or sponsors with expertise in a particular industry or business sector with the intention of pursuing deals in that area. In creating a SPAC, the founders sometimes have at least one acquisition target in mind, but they don't identify that target to avoid extensive disclosures during the IPO process. That's why they're called blank check companies. IPO investors typically have no idea about the company in which they will ultimately be investing. SPACs seek underwriters and institutional investors before offering shares to the public. So basically, it seems like the SPAC is just a big bank account, and they're like, our big bank account is listed on the stock exchange, and our business model is we're going to acquire companies,
merge things,
and that's not illegal as long as you've got enough institutional money behind you to say like, oh yeah, this is Bob. Bob's a fucking legend. He's bought and sold a bunch of tech companies before, and so he knows what he's doing. It seems real speculative. And so you could just weird that buy anything and do anything once you're listed. Yeah, it seems dodgy.
And it feels like it's really outwardly like it's cheating.
Yeah.
Like everything else on Wall Street Stock Exchange, all that sort of stuff. You can see like, oh, I see how you obfuscate things to cheat. But there's enough deniability in there somewhere to be like, oh no, but this is how they do it within the rules. Well, this just seems to be overtly like, oh yeah, no, we've set these companies up to cheat. Yeah. And they just aren't being coy about it.
Yeah, I don't think Wall Street is ever very subtle. They're just kind of like, hey, we can do this thing and no one's stopping us. I guess we're just going to do it?
Let's just do it, yeah. Because
and we can just print money, yes. And no one's going to stop us. No.
Nah.
We're just going to do it until something explodes. How does that sound? We're just going to keep doing this until Leonardo DiCaprio falls over on Quaaludes out of his white Ferrari. Yeah. Like that's
until members on Reddit decide that they're going to throw a spanner into the works.
Game stonks.
Yeah.
Game stonks.
Get him, boys. It's it's real weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, you going to download the app?
What the Truth Social?
Yeah.
Well, if they've got an app.
They must be legit.
Might as well just download it so you can see what they're talking about.
You didn't tell me that they had an app. Well, obviously it's legit.
They'll probably have an app.
Free speech mantra to its nth degree and just say all these things are going to be really pissing off those Nazi shitbags who go onto it.
Apparently, like within hours of launching, Truth Social was like met with a slew of online attacks, DDoS attacks. I think Trump's account was shown with it was in the beta, it was in open beta, so it wasn't fully launched yet. But like Trump's account allegedly posted a pig with shit all over its testicles or something. Like it was just like, It was just like people getting in there and having a lot of
messy.
fun because, like, obviously it hasn't got the kind of security and guardrails that a really well-established tech company like Facebook or Twitter have had to put in place. Like, it's just it's kind of the Wild West, right? So,
Meanwhile, the Russians are just like, yes, yes.
Good.
oh, they probably
Sort of
get a
people
nice,
like-
healthy return on their investment.
People's hopping into the source code with F12 in their browser. Just because this is easy.
Do you reckon how much of this stuff is actually Russian active measures and how much of it is just Russians sitting back and just laughing? They're just like, we don't even
by
need to
this
do anything
stage-
at this point. Like, well, they're just doing it to themselves.
At this stage, yeah, it's like we've started rolling the barrel down the hill, and now we just have to watch it crash into the abyss below.
They've created the ultimate useful idiot.
Yes.
Bloody incredible.
Speaking of useful idiots.
Did we want to stick in America to talk about how they feel about Australia, or do we want to talk about the Australia thing first and then circle back to how America feels?
Let's stay in America. It's not hard to find useful idiots in America. So there's been a real preponderance in the last few weeks of conservative personalities, commentators, really having a go at Australia. Did you want to talk
In
about
particular,
this? Yeah.
Melbourne.
Well, yeah, real interesting in that it seems a big talking point, among conservative voices in America at the moment is like liberating Australia. Like, it goes beyond just them just criticizing, like, we just don't like what they're doing, X, Y, and Z. It's almost like they've taken the tactic of, the Australian, like, governing bodies, like, I don't know if how across they are of, state and federal and all that sort of stuff, whether they think it's the federal government or the state governments and all that sort of jazz. But they're looking at our coronavirus measures, like hard lockdowns and vaccine mandates and all these sorts of things, and they're like, oh my god, the Australian people are in a police state, maybe we should invade. Is where it's almost getting, like, under the guise of, well, yeah, it just like probably a lot of these commentators pushed for various military engagements in the Middle East and all these sorts of things, where when they honestly, like, could not face the fact that maybe it was about oil or maybe it was about military industrial complex spending, being like, no, we're America, let's just go and stick our dick in there and save those people.
I think they're
I don't think
it's quite that bad.
I think they're saying it like half ironically, like, if this is a horrible dictatorship, we should go in and invade and liberate them like we do everywhere else. But, like, also, go fuck yourself. So pretty much. I don't understand. Like, I don't think it's a coincidence that Rupert Murdoch and his press arms here in Australia have been so anti-lockdown and that sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of Fox News personalities and conservative commentators over in the US now also have very deeply held fucking opinions on Australian politics and what's going on over here and liberate. Like, I don't think that's a coincidence, right? So clearly some sort of edict has come down from Murdoch on high saying, like, hey, I need you to give, like, international credibility to this perspective, and I want you to go after this Australian police state. Like,
so you've got commentator Candace Owens, Fox News host Laura Ingram, and you've also got what's his name, Tucker Carlson, going in, and Ted Cruz, is separate to Fox News, but yes, he's also
just barely.
Is he though? I feel the Republican Party is essentially just an arm of the Murdoch press at this point.
These are some of the tweets. Let's get specific. So Candace Owens tweeted on the 8th of October.
Can I just say, look, fuck Candace Owens. Honestly, legitimately,
fuck all these people.
Fuck Candace Owens. Okay, who the fuck asked you, Candace? You have you even fucking been to Australia, bro? Fuck off. Who the fuck asked you?
So, on her YouTube page, she said, "When do we invade Australia and free and oppressed people who are suffering under a totalitarian regime?" That's on YouTube. On Twitter, she said, "Looking into what is happening in Australia, and I can now confidently say that World War III is upon us. We are in the midst of a global psychological..." We are in the midst of a global psychological warfare. Under the guise of COVID-19, governments worldwide have declared war on people, on their people, for full totalitarian control.
I can
That's on Twitter.
actually play the clip if you like.
That's Twitter. That's not a good clip. Are you talking about the YouTube?
Oh, well, she's
clip?
also got videos where she says the same sort of thing, and it's always this over dramatized fucking American. Anyway, here we go.
When do we deploy troops to Australia? When do we invade Australia and free an oppressed people who are suffering under a totalitarian regime? When do we spend trillions of dollars to spread democracy in Australia? Australia currently, make no mistake, is a tyrannical police state. Its citizens are quite literally being imprisoned against their will. So when do we deploy?
No.
Okay, Tom, I didn't realize how bad it was. So,
Yeah.
yep, no, they are calling directly for an invasion of Australia. There you go.
Yeah.
That is
And it
quite
doesn't
quite
seem like
literally
they're
what she's doing.
Behind the heavily guarded walls of the White House, every
That's Tucker.
That's Tucker also saying some dog shit.
Yeah, Tucker Carlson also being a piece of shit. And then I thought also there's similar sentiments being shared by the likes of like Joe Rogan and all those sorts of
Joe Rogan is just kind of like a moron.
shit.
Like, I don't think he's actually a bad person. I think he's just like a guy who's a fucking stoner comedian whose show just happened to become the biggest thing in the world, and he's just vulnerable to bad ideas like every other dumb fucking comedian. Like,
Yeah. I mean, he is, I think still talking up ivermectin and
Yeah,
stuff as COVID treatment, which could kill people.
but I don't believe that he's doing it at, like, I think there's a difference between Joe Rogan and Candace Owens. Like, Candace Owens is deliberately being, like, I think she's like performatively a piece of shit. I think that is her.
Provocative.
Yeah. She's like, her brand is like, she just says shit. And like, the more incorrect the shit, the better it is. Whereas like Joe Rogan's just not very smart. Like, I think that's the difference. Like, I think
Which
she
is more dangerous. Someone who's intentionally being a shit-stirring piece of shit, or someone who's not smart enough to realize that they are.
Yeah, I suppose it depends on how widely they're read, right? Like, Joe Rogan's podcast is the biggest podcast on the planet. And so if they think that we live in a police state and he's saying that and a bunch of people believe in his fucking opinions,
And a lot of people are going to think it too.
yeah. So like Candace Owens as like a share of market, I'm sure is much, much smaller than Joe Rogan's, even if she is like actively a complete fuckwit. To be clear, we don't live in they were talking like the military's keeping people in their home. I'm like looking outside. I'm reading this article. I'm looking outside. It's a nice sunny day. Like, children are playing with their parents in the park. People are laughing, flying kites. I was just like, I don't know where they're looking at, but
they're talking about the door-to-door checks that the army was doing in collaboration with the police for people that are quarantined.
And strong, like, I think vaccine mandates have been talked about as well, of like people losing work if they don't get vaccinated and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, okay, we have vaccine mandates, but also like we don't have 50,000. Like, there was a big stoush this week between Governor DeSantis over in Florida and our governor our premier over here in the Northern Territory. Where
that was Ted Cruz.
It was Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz versus Gunner.
Governor DeSantis was a different one. He was criticizing something else. But all of these Americans all of a sudden very interested in Australia. But yeah, Ted Cruz was saying like, oh, how awful it is that, Australians live in a police state and these vaccine mandates are so bad. And our guy over in the NT was like, mate, you know nothing about us. Florida, Texas has had 50,000 COVID deaths. Northern Territory has had fucking 0. Like, get out of my shit, you unbelievable fuckwit. Like, it's just...
It's also, I guess, an indication that the global conservative movement, which is being run, more or less by, or propagated by Murdoch, but it is a unified movement to an extent, and we saw that with things like Brexit as well, where, you've got this interplay between the conservative movement in the US, Brexit, and in this case here, obviously it's following in with, anti-lockdown, anti-vaccine sentiment as well. So it's kind of scary in some ways because it's the more I feel like these what are really disparate groups. Like I'm sure some of these anti-vax people or people that are anti-lockdown, that are sitting in their little bubble, their information bubble. They're not necessarily connected, to what's happening in Texas. But as technology evolves, and probably linking back to the Truth Social thing, as those kind of platforms become more prevalent, this kind of movement will become more unified, and I would suggest more powerful as a result.
There's been a real movement, or a real phenomenon, I guess, that's been noted in the last sort of 20 or 30 years in politics, which they called the nationalization of politics, right? The fact that you're not voting for the member in your local district anymore. Every political engagement is a referendum on the national political forces, right? Not do I believe that Mark Dreyfus is the right member for me, but do I like Bill Shorten or do I like Scott Morrison, right? Everything becomes nationalized. And I think it's because of social media and the media landscape now, because it's so fragmented and everyone can consume media from any corner of the globe anywhere else now. It's almost like it's a step further than the nationalization of politics. It's the internationalization of politics, which is like, okay, now, governors from Victoria and New South Wales are not just arguing with each other, but they're also arguing with some governor over in fucking Texas, governor over in Florida. Like everything has become internet, left versus right, Trump v. Biden on a global fucking scale. That's what it seems like now. And Murden is the web of shit that holds all of this together. Like, I really don't think you'd have this this.
Yeah.
I don't think you'd have this.
Murdoch?
What did I say?
You said Murden.
Murden. And I was like, I don't know who Murden is. Murdoch. Okay,
I don't think you'd have this scale of interconnected dog shit conservative, media without Murdoch at the helm. I really think he is one of the most destructive forces of the 21st century. Like
How old is he
history,
now?
single-handedly. He's got to be in his 80s. Like, the man's ancient.
I mean, how much longer can he really get? But the question is, even if he dies, I mean, the legacy lives on.
What do you mean if?
Like, when he dies.
I don't know.
No, he might have cracked immortality, George.
He definitely
He's age 90.
He definitely
He's 90.
seems like the guy who would have his brain frozen so he can ruin the world from beyond the grave.
He's born in 1931.
Yeah.
Fuck, he's old.
Dang.
And his opinions reflect it. I just, at a certain point, this is why I really don't like the idea of life extension. Because, like, at a certain point, some people just like need to move on. For the evolution of the species to continue, we need old rich people to like drop off after a while, and then things can continue to grow and change. Because if you have this
cycle,
really powerful conservative, and everything stays the same for hundreds of years because of a powerful ruling class that has complete control over the populace. Like, that's what we called the Dark Ages in history. It was like when things were shit and the Catholic Church was in complete control and nothing progressed for several hundred years. Like, we have a term for that. It's not good. When that finished, that was called the Renaissance.
What I mean? Enlightenment.
Yeah, it's not sustainable for these. You need to have that fresh blood coming through, new ideas, new people, things progressing along.
Well, speaking of things progressing, within the last 10 minutes, I just got a news alert about this. That the Nationals have provided in-principle support for a net zero 2050 target.
Can we just say that the net zero 2050 thing was like, isn't that what we were on track to do anyway?
I'm not sure.
No.
I know.
I remember hearing something.
50% reduction by 2030. I know it was like the bare minimum that we fucking need.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So maybe it was that I was hearing about. Someone was talking about it today. It was like, actually, we were on track for, I guess it was 50% reduction by 2030. And so all that they were saying was that the Nationals had to give in principle support for something that we were already doing anyway. And they were reluctant to do that. And I was like, oh, okay, that seems trash. Imagine trash people.
Yes, but Barnaby Joyce has confirmed the majority of party members have agreed to support the Prime Minister's plan to adopt a target of net zero emissions by 2050.
You think Matt Canavan was one of them?
Who the fuck?
The majority is the key word there.
Yeah, so if you do see Barnaby rolling around in a golden tractor, then you know where he got it.
Yeah. Anyway, that just broke this afternoon, so I thought I'd chuck that in, given earlier in this episode we said, still not resolved.
It is
and
resolved.
It might not be resolved yet. I don't know if it's like resolved, but
in principle
more
is a
Yes.
very loose term. There's a lot of slippage there.
In principle is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that fucking sentence, I'll tell you what.
Yeah. Playing loosey-goosey with that.
It just to wrap up this America thing. It's interesting that Australia has been such a point of fixation for the Americans. I don't think I really understood the place that we have in their imagination. Like,
the American zeitgeist. What is Australia?
The way that they think of us. So Tucker Carlson said, quote, when Americans think of Australia, they imagine a freer, tougher version of themselves. In Australia, the government has implemented total lockdowns nationwide and imposed martial law to enforce them. So, and him and Laura Ingraham and Breitbart and all this sort of, all this sort of shit. I don't think I knew that we had that kind of
Crocodile Dundee. You can thank for that. Everyone just thinks we're running around with, I don't know, shorts and rifles.
Oh yeah, and also the reputation of everything in Australia is trying to kill you. Like that we live in an environment where every animal will try to kill us, despite the fact that you read stories of, man going for jog in Colorado is attacked by mountain lion. And I'm like, I've never just been going for a jog and then get attacked by a fucking dingo.
Yeah,
like,
Joe Rogan.
Doesn't happen as often as you think.
Joe Rogan, who lives in LA, talked about, I remember, not that I listen to Joe Rogan anymore, but back in the day, he talked about going, he'd go for runs in the LA hills and he'd go with a knife in case he got attacked by like a bobcat or like a, some sort of fucking mountain lion. And it's like, okay. Yeah, like I never had to wrestle with a bear when going for a jog, like.
Yeah.
Turns out
I've
Skippy
heard
is
I've heard stories of kangaroos attacking people on, like, when they're going on evening walks and stuff. But like fucking, I don't know.
Actually, it's probably a good way to point out that game I shared with you guys earlier in the week. There's a game called Straya.
Oh
no!
Which
is literally
I thought it was the other game that you shared with us earlier in the week.
No, not that one. There was a game called Straya, and basically you go to this country outback town, and you've then got to basically, it's an open world RPG, and you've got to fight your way against all the native animals. And everything wants to kill you. There's spiders the size of a small car, and there's Skippy. Skippy wants to have a piece of you.
Yeah, it sounds like Far Cry Australia.
Basically, it's Far Cry Australia.
Yeah.
Which in no way reflects accurately any of.
It's the little things you need to be worried about. It's the tiny little redback spider that we don't have spiders the size of cars. It's the tiny ones you need to be worried about.
Yeah, or like the little blue-ringed octopus.
Yeah. That's deadly as hell.
Kill you 5 times before you hit the ground. All right. Well, speaking of Australia, did we want to just touch on our last story here? So we've talked about this whole situation over the past 10 months. Because Jesus, didn't this start happening back in February or January? Around. Christian Porter, former Attorney General Christian Porter, who outed himself as the subject of allegations of sexual assault in the late 80s. Initially didn't step down while he was running a defamation case against the ABC for reporting that an unnamed person who he then named as himself was being alleged of sexual assault, eventually stepped down from being Attorney General, then stepped down from being a minister and is now just a backbencher, but also received an anonymous donation of around $1 million to his legal fees from a blind trust, saying having no knowledge of who the money came from, just receiving $1 million and being like, yeah, that's cool. Declared it, and everyone said,
how there could be anything possibly wrong with this situation. No. Hey guys, just wanted to let you know, $1 million from a blind trust donated to a government minister. I'm just going to accept it. Hope that's all cool with you guys, and I foresee no future problems with this.
Yeah, and not just $1 million donated to a minister, because politicians get donations all the time. Donations to specifically to be suing the national broadcaster.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, even more dicey there. Anywho, so yeah, very dicey and has been a point of huge criticism. And people have
Why?
been
Why
calling
though?
for an investigation into where that money came from.
I don't see why. Doesn't seem like anyone's business, really, as far as I'm
just to
concerned.
find out where the money came from.
Nah, no need.
And
I just like to accept big bags of unaccountable cash. That's as a government minister, that seems totally within my rights.
Well, and that seems to be exactly the sentiment of the government, because they just recently voted down implementing an investigation into the donation of $1 million via a blind trust. And the thing that I find makes this especially galling, aside from the fact that obviously it's like allowing corruption, or at least putting your fingers in your ears going la 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 to maybe corruption, it's that, like, you're not voting down. They weren't voting down carting him off in handcuffs. They weren't like voting down, like, it wasn't like legislating guilt or anything. It was purely just to find out what happened. Like, not the result of that. This wasn't voting down, like, voting down punishing him. This was just voting down, like, finding out what happened.
Yeah.
Like, it's just to know. They voted no to understanding the situation.
Yeah.
Like, it's insane, and it just...
It's almost like they've all got some vested interests in potentially why they would want that to happen.
Yeah, and it just shows, again, we're never going to get any kind of, like, federal anti-corruption commission, because, even when it was just not even enacting punishment voting down, just the very idea of learning more about a donation that they have said is dicey. Like, people like Josh Frydenberg have said, well, it really isn't something that looks that good, is it? It's like, well, then why didn't you want to find anything more about it?
Yeah, so there was a Batuta Advocate headline this week. PM, quote, "We blocked the inquiry because if the public knew the truth, our heads would be on pikes."
Yeah.
Which basically,
and that's very much how it sounds.
It's a protection racket. He's our guy, and we don't want to know what the fuck was happening over there.
Let's not open that can of worms.
Let's just not open that can of worms. How shit is Anthony Albanese? That's what we should all be asking ourselves.
Yeah.
What a prick Anthony Albanese is. Have they stopped looking? Are they looking at me? Are they still looking at us? Can we go? Can we move?
Yeah.
Good.
And it's I feel it just really tears up Adam's 12-step program thing or whatever, because all the parts that are like, you got to welcome the inquiry, you got to do all the blah blah blah. If you vote not to have the inquiry at all, you just flip the table over. Well, you don't like how it's turn over the table.
I'd argue we're at step 7, pending an outcome. So step 7 is this is, by the way, it's the How to Politically Die and Be Resurrected in Australia, a beginner's guide. We're at step 7, which is resign from your ministership and proceed to the backbench because it looks bad in the papers. So we've been there for a few months. Basically, what we're trying to work out is the matter going to go away? Obviously, if there's a proper inquiry, that's not going to go away, and then he'd have to go through step 8, 9, etc. But if it does go away, he can go directly to step 12. Step 12 being to get made a minister again, because there's going to be some inevitable cabinet reshuffle at some point in the near future. Might even be during assuming they win the next election. It might just be as a part of that next cabinet that comes in.
If they're feeling real confident, they might make him the Minister for Women, just to see how everyone reacts.
Just to throw it in there.
Oh my god!
Just to see what they do. How fucked would it be? Yeah, let's fuck it. What are they going to say? Something?
Don't give him ideas.
What would you? Okay. But what are you going to do? Vote for Albo? So.
Yeah, the trick being is that if he goes to step 8, he potentially it may turn out that he's breached the constitution and therefore has to resign from parliament.
Oh, you're so boring, Adam. Blah blah blah. Breach the constitution, whatever. Get off my back. Okay, it's totally normal to get unaccountable bags of cash from people that I don't know who they are. This is normal stuff, okay?
Blind trust smells dodgy.
It's just the way
who in the financial sector was like,
it's the way that good government works, Adam. What you want is duffel bags of cash, canvas bags with a fucking $sign on it, handed to you by the fucking Hamburglar. That's the way that good government should operate. If you don't like it, get out of my fucking country.
Why is a blind trust a thing.
A thing?
Like, why would
why does it exist but for corrupt purposes?
you know what I mean? Like, what was the genuine, honest need for someone in the financial sector to propose the concept of a blind trust, and then for legislators to go, yeah,
I guess it could make sense where it's like if you're a minister going into Parliament and you want to avoid conflicts of interest, you can put your stuff into a blind trust.
Take away the political aspect from it.
I'm just
as a general concept,
spitballing as to like why it could be useful to say like, okay, I want to be completely accountable to the public. I don't want to know what my investments are. I'm going to put all that stuff that's held by a blind trust. It's operated over there. I don't have any oversight. I don't know whether my ministerial decisions are having a positive or negative effect on the outcome. Like, I'm just trying to think best case scenario. What could it be?
But that also just sounds like, while I see the point of like, oh, I want to not be beholden to like the people who are giving me the money. So if I don't know who they are, great. That just sounds like eventually like Fat Tony's going to knock on your door.
I wasn't saying for the purposes of donation. I'm saying like if I own me as George runs for Parliament, George owns a bunch of shares. For George not to behave corruptly when he's in Parliament and say like, oh, if I vote on this, it's going to have a positive or negative effect on my shares. To avoid that conflict of interest, you might then want to put it in some sort of blind trust. You say, I don't know what's in there. And so I don't know if it's going up or if it's going down.
You bought it, then you're putting it in there.
Yeah, but presumably you have someone else in charge of that who would then reallocate it to other stuff that you don't know. I was just trying to think
more kind of like
why,
you could have.
Why does the mechanism even exist? Like, I'm trying to think best case scenario.
I think it would be more kind of to do with family and charity situations. So where you've got, a charity where you don't want a charity might have a blind trust fund, or people can donate to that charity without having to necessarily be identified as having done it potentially. Or you've got maybe family situations where you've got a trust for a child or a minor, for instance, where the funds aren't necessarily accountable. Maybe I don't know.
I was right. So this is the second time we've been on Investopedia this episode. Blind trusts are often established in situations where individuals want to avoid conflicts of interest between their employment and investments. So I think that's why it was created. But the way it's being used in the Porter case is like completely inappropriate, right? Like, it's definitely not why the mechanism was created in the first place. It's not a good look.
Yeah, it's not a good look, particularly when it's like, all right, well, maybe let's look into it. Nah, let's not. But
at what point is it literally just a protection racket? Like, where it's like,
I think we've passed it. Passed it.
We don't want to look into that because it's our guy. And it's just like, why though? And they're like, because he's our guy and he's not your guy.
He's not you guys. And we don't want to look into any of this sort of stuff because if we look into one of them, we'll probably have to look into all of them. And then, oh boy, let's just not. But
yeah.
Well, and you can see that as an example with was Brittany Higgins when that started, when that kick started. Then all the apples started falling from the tree. Do you know what I mean? So you'd have to assume there are multiple types of things or cultures within Parliament House where this is just part of politics,
And it's interesting that the first impulse with the Brittany Higgins thing, it sort of belies their, why the culture is the way that it is. It tells you something that the first impulse when that story came out, or when Brittany Higgins reported the alleged assault, has the guy been convicted or not? Can we still say alleged?
I don't think it's got
alleged.
I don't know.
So when Brittany Higgins reported the alleged assault, the first response from the minister, Linda Reynolds, was to kind of keep a lid on it. Like, it wasn't like, let's have an inquiry, let's flush the whole thing out, let's get the guy, let's have a criminal inquiry. No, the cleaners came a couple of days later, cleaned up a bunch of evidence. Like, it was all kind of the impulse from the
optics
of the structure. It was optics. It was all about optics. It was all about sweeping it under the rug and making sure nobody ever fucking found out about it. And
which is an interesting way to circle back to the first story of the day, where again it's all about optics. Like, they're deciding one thing in cabinet. Yes. That's all part of the discussion. But then when it turns out the wind's potentially changing, or at least it looks bad, someone makes an executive decision, we'll just do this instead. it's just policy on the run.
It's good government working as intended. They've listened, they've learned,
Mm.
and they've acted. Just to sort of quickly call back to the Matthew Guy thing, I promise I'll be quick. It just shows also the fact that they're talking about gay conversion therapy and arguing about it in the party room still. It just shows how little actual policy they have. It's just like, let's just argue over a bunch of bullshit social issues. It's like, no. How about like, here's our plan for helping Victoria come out of the coronavirus. Here's our recovery plan. Look how much better it is. Like there's just a complete dearth of actual policy and policy making. It is literally just an apparatus for people to push their dogshit social views. Like there's nothing, there's nothing underneath. They go, okay, yeah, they're arguing about gay conversion therapy, but they've got a 6-point plan to help the economy. It's like, no, there's nothing beneath the surface. It's all surface. Like it's pretty unreal.
Then the other aspect, which again lines up with some of the other stuff we were talking about, is that the reason why they've brought this up again is because there are obviously Christian lobbyists that are lobbying the Nationals.
Yes.
And when political parties are responding, and this is probably part of the reason why politics is broken, generally speaking, is that it becomes less about people, vision, goals. It becomes more about how can we appease this particular lobby
Yes.
To get what we want. And that, I guess that's what's happened with the coal stuff as well, and the whole net zero thing. The Nationals seemingly are meant to represent their constituents, which is rural farmers, that kind of thing. What they're just being lobbied by big coal.
Yes.
And big and large
the resources. You want to think that it's about something more than that it's like there's more to it. And sometimes there is no more to it. Sometimes it's literally lobbied. Just they've been lobbied, they've been bought off. Like the thing that and I would really recommend you guys check out the Big Deal film, which is streaming on iView, or will be streaming very shortly, where they talk about this. And the thing that astounded me watching that film was how cheap it was to buy democracy. You know, like it wasn't like, we're not talking like hundreds of millions of dollars. Like during the last election cycle, the LNP raised 165 million and the ALP raised like 126 million or something around those figures. And it's like, we're not talking, you know, like the American, Obama, Mitt Romney campaign. There was like billions of dollars that were raised by either side. Like it was, a gargantuan financial thing. It's like, the thing that astounded me about watching that film is how cheap our fucking democracy is. It's like, oh, this coal lobby donated like $15,000 to you. Adani donated whatever it was, 45 grand to the Liberal Party and nothing to the ALP, or like, and a lot of companies that are hedging their bets, they're donating to both the ALP and the LNP. And it's like, but we're only talking like in the thousands. We're not talking... It's so cheap. Our democracy is so cheap.
But if it was multi-million dollars, if it was large sums of money, I think that would look like that would get out. Do you know what I mean? Like that,
maybe.
Because the bar here is so different to the US. Assuming that those donations, I'm assuming people would get a hold of those details some way or the other, whether it be through a whistleblower or
our donation rules are actually much less transparent than the US's, because and this is something that they go into the film, is like, actually the US has really like, there's caps on as to how much individuals can donate, which we have here. And there's donations that are reported and donations that don't need to be reported here, which they don't have in the US. So like a good portion, something like 2/3 of donations are never revealed. We don't know the source of where they come from, who they go to, how much they are exactly. We get like raw numbers, and that's it.
Rupert Murdoch.
And then a third is donations that are declared, but they don't need to be declared for something like 12 to 18 months after the donation has taken place, at which point it's kind of like redundant. Nobody cares. So it's like, it's actually like our Australian democracy is actually much less accountable in many ways than American democracy. Which was something that surprised me quite a bit. You sort of look at American democracy being so broken and corrupt, and Joe Manchin made $500,000 on coal last year, and like you sort of look at it and go, oh, that's broken. There's no way Australian democracy could be as broken. And we're like, no, it's equally as broken, and it's much cheaper. You get a much better return on investment if you're Adani donating to Australian, political parties than you would democracy is so much more expensive overseas. You get a great deal if you come to Australia.
Bargain prices.
Bargain basement prices. Everything, democracy must go. Everything must go today.
That is incredibly sad.
Oh, it feels like you as a person could donate a couple of $1,000s, whatever the cap is, and have say with your member of parliament. Like, it's actually not expensive to do, which is weird and broken.
Well, tune in next week for how to buy your local member with George.
Yeah, we'll do some. We'll get the price list out, and we'll go through a Zoom meeting, go through a prezzo, and we'll say how many politicians should I sign you up for? Do a hard close on the podcast. On that note. Very depressing. We have been, we are, we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on all the social medias that have, do, or ever will exist at Unnatural Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. YouTube banned us very briefly and then reinstated us, which was nice after I wrote a very nasty letter. They said, "You're vaccine misinformation." And I said, "Have you watched the fucking episode? We're the ones who are advocating vaccines. You fucking troglodytes." And we were restored. So that was nice.
And now we've been banned for calling them troglodytes. So
Well,
all good.
Fucking cave trolls. Honestly, who are these fucking morons? It's such horseshit. Make sure that you like and subscribe. Make sure you rate the podcast on your podcatcher of choice. Helps people find the show. Make sure you follow me on Twitter and Instagram at George Tsipos.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tom D. Heath.
You can follow me on Instagram at AC Doreen.
And you can follow us all down to YouTube headquarters, where we'll be registering our distaste for them in person.
But obviously, we'll want to make sure the video's uploaded prior to doing that.
Yep.
Yeah. And if they could boost our posts anyway, like that would be.
Oh yeah, no, we'll pay to boost them for sure. That's obviously totally sensible. So do you take you guys take cash or Bitcoin or how? Credit card, okay?
Ethereum.
Yeah, that's interesting choice. Thanks for listening, guys. Love your faces. We'll see you next week.